Well, I'm a little more cynical than you, so here's my theory. You know, corruption came up in the presidential election. The CEO of this company, Kelsey Warren, Energy Transfer Partners, owns the Dakota Access Pipeline, owns the U.S. half of the Trans-Pecos Pipeline. Well, they've been very generous to Texas lawmakers. Rick Perry, former governor, got nearly $6 million from Kelsey Warren and his company. Greg Abbott, the current governor, has gotten money. Greg Abbott appointed Kelsey Warren to the state's wildlife board. So
Warren's on the Texas Parks and Wildlife Board now. Yeah.
So, in my reporting here, I've seen Texas doesn't have that tight of regulation. Permit process, like you said, is kind of a rubber stamp. To people just watching, could it be assumed that this is a company in serious debt right now, and the lawmakers that have benefited from them are giving them carte blanche to essentially dig through people's backyards. I was at a landowner's home, 400 yards from her window is the pipe, so that they could make money and decrease their debt.
We hear this an awful lot, and I agree with you that Mr. Warren or his company or however they've done it have provided political gentlemen who've occupied various offices with an awful lot of money. This is the nature of the business, politics in general. Money is very much a power, no question about it. The problem I have is I'm sitting here, I'm just a poor little one-man lawyer. I can go over to the Railroad Commission without giving them a dime and get a T4 permit, because that's all they do. Now, if Mr. Warren hadn't given them a dime, he still would have gotten that permit. So when you start talking about influence, when you go down and dig out and see how they got that permit, they could have gotten it, like I said, without giving any one of the commissioners 10 cents. Where the influence comes, if there is any, is maybe with control over one or more of the state agencies that might have something to do with it. Parks and Wildlife is one. They have certain responsibilities with respect to environmental concerns. We've been told that the Parks and Wildlife people, employees, agents in the Big Bend area, have been advised to stay away and keep their mouth shut.
Advised by who?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Well, isn't that kind of a red light conflict of interest that Kelsey Warren's on that board?
You hear this third or fourth or fifth hand. And I'm positive that may well have happened out there, but I'm not in a position to prove it, because if I got one of those employees out there to say, yes, we were told to stay away and stay out of the way, he's gone. And I'm not personally going to put anybody in that position. Influence, I can't deny that the possibility exists. The extent of it, I have no idea. Because when you get into it, the fact that they get a permit doesn't require a single dime of contribution. So it's what happens after that that becomes, shall we say, questionable.
And in my travels, I have definitely seen certain judges that are ruling over cases like this have ties to the state or federal lawmakers. So you do with that what you would want. I want to ask a non-legal question because what's interesting about this pipeline is I think it shows that the opposition to pipelines like this is forming a broader coalition. You know, I think a lot of oil and gas and conservative lawmakers like to make it seem that the only people that oppose pipelines are, you know, radical hippie environmentalists or Native Americans. But here, I've been meeting your average landowner, more conservative leaning, some cowboys. You know, it's been a great experience for me. Can you kind of talk about, I guess, whether it's conservative ideology or just being a Texan, this is kind of like big government, which the conservative ideology is against. You know, I can't think of a bigger government move than just coming through your backyard pipeline for the use of sale in Mexico. Some of the landowners, I don't know if you've had this experience, are kind of reevaluating everything they've known politically. Can you kind of talk about how this aligns with being a conservative in Texan?
Well, I hesitate to put a label on it, but because in the big picture in my mind, here's the problem, and Coyne Gibson may have reflected on that, but the counties in the Big Bend are extremely and sparsely populated. Okay. The bulk of the shift in the legislature has been from being dominated by senators or representatives from rural counties to the dominant number of them now being from Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Beaumont, the big cities. Pipeline condemnation is not an issue in downtown Dallas. It's not an issue in downtown Houston or any of these cities. It doesn't reflect, it doesn't get to the average senator or representative as a concern. Oh yeah, I know about it. You know, there's him. So there's a very, very, it's very, very difficult for the people in the Big Bend to have enough public influence to really generate the story. Now, the one in North Dakota is dramatic because of a group of Indians from the Sioux Nation who decided to dig in and say, I'm here by God, and we're not going. We've had the beginnings of a protest in the Big Bend, but it hasn't gotten outside of that area. There's probably not 15 people in this town who even know there's a problem, and less in Dallas. So when you can't put a conservative or liberal label upon this thing, in what myself and some others are trying to do is to figure out a way to take the problems that are going on there and get them before the Texas legislature, because they're the ones who can change the law, and that is what has to happen. I had one very well-known former senior editor for the Austin newspaper, Rich Oppel. You may have known him or heard of him. And he asked me a question one day. He said, I've heard all this about the pipeline, and what is their response? And their response is going to be, I'm not doing anything other than what the law allows me to do.
I've heard that from a lot of politicians as well.
That's right. And so what does that tell you? From the standpoint of private property owners, period, anywhere in this state, the law's wrong. It's imbalanced. It's all in favor of the pipeline. I'll give you a classic example. The district judge in Brewster in Presidio County, the same judge, he serves in both counties, has appointed commissioners to do the valuation of the property, and they have come in with some pretty good size awards. And I think the judge is, he's not been inclined to mess with that. What happens then, or has in many cases, under the law, the pipeline is allowed to say, well, I don't like that award. That's $900,000. That's too much money. So I'm going to object to it. They object to it formally with the court, put the money in the registry of the court, and they're required to put another small bond. And guess what? The law allows them to then take possession of the land and start trenching and putting the pipeline in before the condemnation proceeding is anywhere near final. That is wrong. That is dead wrong.
And in terms of safety,
and the court can't stop that. The court can't stop it because the law says that's what they're allowed to do. And so a landowner doesn't know what's coming on. He says, well, I don't think what they've offered me is peanuts. I'm not going to take it. And then 3 commissioners the judge appointed says, here's what we think your property is going to be worth. And the pipeline says, no, I'm not going to pay that. And they file an objection. They get up one morning, the next thing they see is a bulldozer and a trenching machine coming through their land, and they have no idea why.
nothing they could do about it.
And nothing they can do about it.